So I've been thinking about reframing my offering lately to something that's a little bit more in line with what value I add to the reading conversation. In my last video, I was talking about how I'm cautiously optimistic for the discourse going around reading right now, where people are saying, hey, we're entering this literacy crisis. We're now in a state of emergency with people being able to read books and to want to read books and want to engage with books. And what really sticks out to me is that I'm like, I think that's missing something that's quite important, which is that every person should be more interested in finding their own idiosyncratic reading system as opposed to just chasing a general baseline. And I put thought into this because what is idiosyncrasy? There's a book that I read recently that was fantastic called How to Talk About Books You Haven't Read by Pierre Bayard. And I've been thinking a lot about one of the concepts that he brings up in that book, which is the inner book. The inner book is this combination individual society reference point that we have for all of the books that we read, and we come up with our own understanding of the source material that we're seeing. And to me, this idiosyncrasy is deeply undervalued and understudied. We kind of have a notion of individual prosperity where we're like, oh, well, you should just do what you want. But it's not really described how to make an individual system more effective and more efficient. So I think that takes a lot of different shapes and forms. For some people, that's attending book clubs. For some people, that's joining online book clubs. For some people, that's just reading alone. For some people, it's skimming a bunch of books. For some people, it's coming up with a shopping list of books that's around a certain topic. For some people, it's deep diving into an author and having a deep understanding of when they were writing the book. For some people, it's going to that author's birthplace and exploring the town that they lived in. If you were reading Ulysses, going to see Dublin in person, for example. And I think that the discourse around reading is largely one of people aren't reading the X, Y, Z, so they're not having an understanding of cultural norm A, B, C, which fair, but I've read some classics, The Crime and Punishments of the World, for example, and I don't necessarily feel Great Gatsby, you know what I mean, more like awakened to necessarily the Western construct. I think a book that what made sense for me, here's a good example of idiosyncrasy, is Developer Hegemony. That book was fantastic for my understanding of the Western job market, specifically for people who practice software and work as software engineers at organizations, and why we get fucked over by organizations, basically. And I guess I didn't really think about these things until recently, when I've really been ramping up trying to lead workshops. I've been ramping up trying to just engage with real people. And this is actually an example of that, is I created this system, or this worksheet, where up top there's goals, and there's blockers, there's strategies, and there's an accountability section. And on the bottom, or on the back rather, is some definitions. And I've been trying to just hand these out to people, kind of like flyers. And the point is that I'm trying to, both for my own satisfaction and curiosity, and to help these people discover what their own reading goals are, because it is different from person to person. Some people will want to read the classics. Some people will want to read more nonfiction. Some people will want to read more fiction. Some people will want to just read those books on the shelf that, like, every time they see is just like a mental reminder of the fact that they're not reading. Some people just want to spend less time on their phone, and they think that reading could be a good replacement for spending less time on their phone. Some people want to do it because they have a very specific knowledge that they want to acquire, right? They want to understand the history of blacksmithing in Europe, or they want to understand African-American culture through the diaspora, right? And books are a fantastic way of getting that information downloaded into those brains. But the functionality of coming up with your own note-taking system, of coming up with your own reading strategy, of coming up with your own diet, of coming up with your own kind of like recommendation system, review system, it's like kind of a lot. But I think that if you break it down into idiosyncrasies, you get to a really fun spot. And I kind of have noticed this, and maybe this is because I am quite an idiosyncratic person. I see a lot of stuff that would be considered admirable in the Western zeitgeist. I think a good example of this is having children or to get married and to do these things. And those things don't really appeal to me. And I can get how they appeal to other people, but I find them to be a default of people being like, well, this is what success looks like. If you have the job and you have the car, you have the house, you have the kids, you ergo are successful. And I don't really buy that claim. I don't buy the truth claim there. I don't think that success is a backdrop on certain things that have happened in your life. I think it's more of a deep understanding of your own anxiety and meaning and your own self-described meaning in this world, and your ability to execute against that meaning. And I think that happiness is basically a derivative of that. And so with a system like this, again, idiosyncratic reading feels to me like the direction that I'm trying to take things. And I'm actually going to upload another video to another channel where I'm going to be ranting. It's called Instagram, that channel, about going after moneyed organizations and deprioritizing content while making content. So I think that that'll also be an interesting conversation, but I don't want to have that here. The only conversation that I want to have here is that I think that I'm now heading down a path where reading as a system is now helping people find their idiosyncratic reading style, and then executing on creating an engineered way for them to reach that style and to maximize against it.